We're ready to begin. Can I have your attention, please? Can I have your attention, please? Thank you. Hi, could I? Is that better? Okay. I think we're ready to begin. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we want to appreciate everyone coming out here for support of this message that we want to provide, the veto of expedited Bill 2-225. The speakers today, the lineup is going to be County Executive Elrich, who's going to walk you through his reasons for this veto. And then we are proud to welcome support from the community, and that will be Cheryl Gannon and Alan Bowser from the Montgomery County Civic Federation, Lisa Blackwell Brown from the Montgomery County Government Employees Organization, or otherwise known as McGEO, Jenny Sue Dunner from the Montgomery County Communities Coalition, Howard Schoenholz from the Montgomery County Communities Coalition, Rohit Khanna from Somerset Town Council member, and Lloyd Gersey from the Citizens Coordinating Committee on Friendship Heights, and Britt Simmentov from the Kent Mill community. So those are going to be your speakers. I will come back up and introduce all those people again when we get to their part. But without further ado, let me introduce County Executive Marc Elrich.
So it's really nice to see everybody here, and I'm always happy when I see civic folks engaged. I'm hoping this is the beginning of a greater degree of civic engagement in public policy in Montgomery County, because there are a lot of issues that impact your communities, and when people don't hear from you and you're not able to make your voices loud enough, then you get ignored. And this is an example. I'll say parenthetically that, you know, as we go through a budget now and people talk about taxes, it's policies like this, the constant reduction, for example, of impact taxes in the county, that actually increase the burden on county residents. So if people don't want to increase the burden on county residents, the easiest thing to do is make sure that the private sector pays its fair share, so that the balancing of this budget doesn't wind up on your backs. And that's my general view of how things have proceeded so far. So I want to start by talking about what Bill 225 does. First, it provides this automatic 20-year abatement, elimination of 100% of property taxes for conversion or demolition of commercial buildings, 2 stories or higher, that are at least 50% vacant and become residential. It includes Montgomery and Wheaton Mall properties. Westfield Corporation, one of the largest corporations in the world. It is one of the largest holders of shopping centers in the world. They have all the wealth that matters, and the idea that they would need a tax break of 0 taxes to do something that's going to generate a profit for them is just mind-boggling. It includes retroactivity for certain properties that have gone all the way through the site plan approval by the planning board by the effective day of this legislation. That means that people who put in a project with no expectation of 100% tax increase, with their own belief, and by the way, the belief of the banks that were financing their project, that their projects are viable, they're going to get the gift of 100% tax break as well. And what bothers me most is when you know that other people have done this and didn't need a tax break, why are you insisting that everybody get a tax break? So, go on. So, first of all, the council proceeded with absolutely no evidence of the need for studies. There were no studies done that subsidies were needed. None. People around us, they're doing some subsidies. Not everybody's doing this. People are subsidizing empty buildings, but you're going to talk about a 50% occupied building here. That is not the normal way to proceed. But there's no proof that you have to have this. And fortunately, we were able to find proof that people do this without subsidies. This is a picture of the Guardian building in Silver Spring. It's on the corner of, I think it's Georgia and Cameron. And it's 178 multifamily units, 155,000 square feet of office to residential, 75,000 new square feet. 0 subsidy from Montgomery County. It's under construction right now. And if you look carefully, it's the darker of the 2 buildings. And if you notice, toward the center of the picture, that building changes color. You all see where it changes color? Going vertically? The vertical part, the gray-brown part, is the existing building, the older building. And this is the new building added on top of it. They took down, because I watched this happen, they took down all the walls. They scraped all of the floors. They took everything out of the interior of the building. And then they went back and turned this office building into a residence. It exists. It's soon to open. It's going to be luxury housing. No subsidy. Go ahead. This is another project. This is on Roeder Road in Silver Spring, very close to the other projects. That's 6-story, 35 units. Lower level is office and retail. That was an office building until they turned it into this. No subsidy to do that. And this is another one in Silver Spring on Fenwick Lane. It's a condo building, 102 units, 8 stories. It was built in 2016. So they've been doing these conversions for a while now. No subsidy from the county government. So while there's no proof that anybody needs a subsidy, we've got proof that people are doing this without any subsidy. And I always like to quote anything that comes from Park and Planning, because sometimes they say delicious stuff, and I like this. So they're talking about these kind of office to residential conversions, and it says they could be in locations where there's strong market demand for multifamily housing. Such locations will have convenient transit options and are typically situated in urban, walkable environments with access to a host of amenities, which are attributes that made the Octave at 1320 successful. The Octave is another project that got converted. Areas such as downtown Silver Spring and Bethesda command higher rents and prices and strong market potential for residential use shifts. And it says, and the strong market potential for residential use shifts the conversion investment tipping point toward repurposing or conversion. So here's Park and Planning analyzing this and saying that the market demand is such that it has now tipped investment toward conversion rather than maintaining the existing building. So now you've got examples of real things, you've got Park and Planning opining why this is the natural course of things, and then along comes this bill. Second problem, where's the affordable housing and where's the workforce housing? I think you all know that Andrew and others have talked about workforce housing, and it's got to be everywhere except in existing developments. No requirements for developers to, in their new projects, include workforce housing. No requirement in this to provide any workforce housing. So I thought this was urgent and critical, but it's not here. And it only raises the MPD requirement in places like Silver Spring and Bethesda from 15% to 17.5%. In the real world, if you built 100 units, you get 3 more units. You're paying 20 years of no taxes, if this is their goal, to call this affordable housing, to get 3 more units per 100 than you otherwise would have gotten. There is no economic rationale for doing this. The county is engaged in, we do tax forgiveness for some projects. We've done that in order to get higher levels of affordability. We have never paid this much money per unit when you think about the extended 20-year cost to get this done. It's kind of embarrassing that somebody would suggest we have to do this, because all they would have had to do is talk to our people and ask what's the normal subsidy to get to have to get units done. This is far beyond where we should be. This is likely going to displace other housing projects. Nobody's building spec housing anymore, and nobody's building spec offices anymore. And so it's market demand, which pretty much solely drives the building of housing in Montgomery County. And there's a lot of demand for low-income housing, but nobody's building low-income housing. That's not anything anybody ever does. So the one market segment for which we have huge demand, there is nothing being built. And this doesn't do anything to address that part of the segment. The other problem in Montgomery County is the job problem. But the lack of jobs is one of the main reasons you're not getting demand for housing here. People mostly want to live closer to their jobs if they can. As Montgomery County's jobs have slowed down, Montgomery County housing has slowed down because you're not getting new people to come here to live where there aren't jobs for them to be found. And so that's one of the problems. If people want to accelerate housing production, we need to expand economic growth, and we've been doing a lot of work to try to drive that. But this is not an easy process, and the county does a number of things that mitigate against it. But under no circumstances is this going to add to more units being built in total than would otherwise be built. This is a logic problem. If you have demand for 4,000 units, and right now that demand would normally be satisfied by everything we have in the pipeline, and all the plans that are also, all the master plans, and you've got, 80,000 units in the master plans and 30-something thousand units in the pipeline. These are units that have already been approved and can be built tomorrow if a builder just pulled the building permit. If they're not building these units, something else is going on. And if you think that building this is going to do anything to move the needle in the number of affordable housing units, all it means is somebody may decide to convert an office building because it's more profitable than buying land and building new from the top, where you're going to have to be taxed when that building gets built. So we've actually incentivized something where you could wind up with the same number of units. If all of them are built where it's been zoned, we get taxes from every property. If some of them are built on this property, we get fewer taxable properties built, and all these properties pay no taxes. This is a net loss to the county. And I heard somebody reference employment. And they said, well, you got to look at the employment of people who are going to live here. They're going to live here, or they're going to live in the unit that would have been built someplace else in Montgomery County. Whether they live in a community that we've master planned or they live in a building that's been converted, Montgomery County doesn't get any more tax revenue than it otherwise would have gotten. This is not in addition to what we're going to get. This is in place of some of the ways we would have gotten the number of housing units we needed. I show this chart, and I've been using this a lot because it talks about how much zone capacity the county has. It is, in total, over 85,000 units in your master plans. And I know some of you have been involved in master plan processes. Jenny Sue, I know you've been involved in master plan processes. Alan, you've seen these things go forward. We've got all these master plans in Montgomery County. There are 85,000 units there, plus the 30-something thousand units that already have permits. That's over 100,000 units. That is more units than are projected to be needed by 2050. And oh, by the way, when all this stuff about changing our zoning that the council's been talking about and the planning board started, we pointed out that COG wrote a letter to everybody, all the planning departments, saying you don't need to change your zoning to meet the housing needs up to 2050 and beyond. So we already know we don't have to do anything strange in order to meet our housing needs. We just have to focus on the things that will actually bring demand for housing here. Next. It contradicts the MOVE grant goals. And it was only a couple of months ago the council was standing up and proud and talking about we're doing these MOVE grants. We're going to make sure that we give money to businesses to bring jobs back to Montgomery County. And the MOVE grants would make office vacancies extinct. This is about bringing people into offices so that we can grow the economy and have more jobs here, and also to fully collect the value of those buildings. Bill 225 actually incentivizes developers to kick out tenants in buildings that are 50% occupied. So you go from celebrating handing out money to bring people here to go to work, and then you say you're going to vacate buildings with 50% occupancy, and where those people are going to go. And how are they going to feel about Montgomery County when they realize it was the county that enabled them to get kicked out of their offices, and now you're asking me to stay here and disrupt my business if I'm going to have to move? Why would I stay in a place where they kick me out of a building? So as an economic incentive, an economic plan, I don't see it, and I don't think it makes sense. So picking winners and losers. Some developers will get a 20-year exemption. Other developers, and we've already heard from some of them, they know that they're not getting any tax breaks. So somebody buys a piece of dirt and they build a building, there's no tax break on it. Somebody buys a piece of dirt with an office building on it, you knock it down, and now all of a sudden you get this tax break. It's not fair, and it sets a new standard. What I'm worried about, we're starting to subsidize market rate housing, and there's already a letter from one of the developers' attorneys that the county's going to have to think more about doing this kind of thing to encourage building in Montgomery County. We should not be subsidizing market rate housing under any circumstances whatsoever. And I don't want that to become the future standard of subsidizing residential development for everyone. That makes no sense at all. We do this for affordable housing because since the private sector is never going to meet those goals, the county winds up, and the state sometimes, in assisting people build affordable housing. But you don't need to do this. And I will say that the affordable housing pilot is a 15-year pilot. So here you've got buildings that are affordable housing getting only a 15-year pilot, and they're trying to make rent with people who are who have much lower incomes. So these folks are able, the nonprofits are able to manage these buildings and get by with less of a subsidy on a far lower rent stream, and now the developers doing for-profit stuff get maximum rent stream. These are the other winners and losers, and this is not a surprise. Racial Equity and Social Justice Impact Statement, the Office of Legislative Oversight anticipates expedited Bill 225 could have a negative impact on racial equity and social justice in Montgomery County. Why do we create an Office of Racial Equity? Why do we ask them to go and review projects and then ignore them? I will point out when Thrive came out, the racial equity analysis said, this dog doesn't hunt. It's not good. When the Tacoma Park plan came out, we did a racial equity assessment because nobody else was doing a racial equity assessment, and it said this is going to displace people. All these things ignored by the council. So you got a racial equity office. They tell you this isn't going to further racial equity. It may make Donald Trump happy, but that's not the policies we're supposed to be following in Montgomery County. So this is going to cost taxpayers millions of dollars in lost revenue over 6 fiscal year. Now they've shortened it to 20 years from 25. They've excluded retail, except for Wheaton Mall and Montgomery Mall, the two biggest pieces of retail in the county. There are some other changes that moderate the bill somewhat, so it may not be $2.6 billion or whatever it was that was originally estimated, but it's likely to be large. There's no way it can't be large if it's successful. If it's unsuccessful, it'll just be another thing we do that doesn't work. But to the extent that it generates conversions, all this is money out of our pockets. And when it comes out of our pockets, and just like we're dealing with in our budget right now, if more money were not available this year, we would be cutting things because if the council's not going to raise taxes, the only thing is to do is to either not meet your school requirements or lower the social services and not address many of the means that we've had to be dealing with, especially since COVID. My FY26 budget program, we already couldn't fund programs that we wanted to. We struggled to keep up with, for example, feeding people. Our clinics are under-subsidized today. They don't get the level of reimbursement they need. They're unable to provide most specialty care for the people who use our clinics, and it's tens of thousands of people in Montgomery County who use our clinics. These are all things that we pay for and that make a difference, and all this is going to do is make it harder and harder to fund the things we need to keep this community more stable. It's not only going to exacerbate today's problem, but it'll make it worse every year. If it was like, what did they do this year? Was they postpone the pilot, or no, on development, there was the tax on impact taxes. They just postponed for 1 year collection, which created a $5 million hole in our budget this year because they gave developers another year to pay the taxes. Those taxes would have otherwise gone into my budget, and we wouldn't be talking about raising that $5 million. And if you looked at all the other impact tax reductions the council's done, all that is money we have to get you to pay for. So we need to figure out whether the county should support something like this. Should we be doing this to make a project viable? And basically, from our perspective, we want to be able to continue to approve exemptions for projects that include meaningful levels of affordable housing. This has no meaningful level of affordable housing. If we're going to give a subsidy, we ought to be achieving some goal other than making a developer rich. That is not my personal goal. It is not the goal of most people in Montgomery County. Not that they don't need to be made rich, they already are. But that's not the purpose of why we do things. We try to do things to build a stronger community and a stronger county. And taking money away from those things to just enrich people doesn't make any sense at all. So we have equity concerns, as I already said. We have transparency concerns. Only one public hearing on all the pieces of more housing now, which is what, 3 or 4 different pieces. So all that jumbled up into one hearing. No town hall or community meetings on Bill 225. Which developers is this going to benefit? Do we know who this is going to benefit? I'd like to know who they talked to that said this would be a really good idea. Are these people who have an interest in doing this? If they can make the case that if you give me more money, I'll do it. We don't know who we talked to. We have no idea how this bill came about. And what was the need to rush this from introduction? The only reason I could see doing this in 9 weeks is wanting to make sure there was no prolonged discussion in the community. People, in the lack of a newspaper here, people do not know what's going on. There's no way that you would get information unless you're tuned in to somebody in government who you know and somebody who's talking to you. But the bulk of the people in our communities don't know any of that. And so when you're proposing, whether it's rezoning or whether you're talking about giveaways like this, it almost resonates no way within our communities, and that's a problem. I'm asking, and I am going to veto this, and I'm asking the council to take the time to consider the unintended consequences and to narrow the scope of the bill or kill it altogether. If this is going to get us a decent amount of affordable housing like the projects we already work with, that's one thing. If this is just another giveaway for market rate housing, this is not something we should be doing. So it passed by a 10-1 vote. Will Durando was the only council member who voted against it. To override the veto, the council has to have 7 votes, which means we have to find 4 more council members to change their mind. And that would turn that into a 6-5 vote, and the bill would be vetoed. That would not override the veto. So we've got to find 4 council members who understand what's being done. It is really disappointing that no one demanded case studies, that no one said, what is the case for doing this in the first place? And if they're not going to do it, I'm going to do it, because it doesn't make sense. So that's my part of this. You can call and write your council. I'm sure, I don't think they'll be able to override it this week. It'll probably be next week. But you all should, get as many people to speak up and let the council know what people think about this. It would be really helpful. I'm going to stop now and turn this over to who's first. You're going to do that?
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate the presentation. Our first speakers are going to be Cheryl Gannon and Alan Bowser from the Montgomery County Civic Federation. The Montgomery County Civic Federation has been around for 100 years. Congratulations. And the volunteers of the Civic Federations have committed themselves to providing an effective citizen voice to government policymakers, both elected and appointed. So Alan and Cheryl, would you like to come up and show you can speak first? Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Cheryl Gannon, and I'm the current president of the Montgomery County Civic Federation. We are a 100-year-old umbrella organization of civic and homeowner associations across the county, with a reach of 35,000 households. We have a strong commitment to both affordable and workforce housing, like the county executive, and we adopted a 2024 resolution on strategies for those goals that includes conversion of office space to housing. But we're here today to support the county executive's veto of the legislation adopted by the council. Regrettably, the legislation as adopted by the council fails to adequately address the most critical needs and is not fiscally responsible, and so we cannot afford it. We cannot support it. The amount of affordable housing to be produced, just 17.5%, in exchange for this very generous tax break is too small. The legislation will primarily result in market rate housing, and the bill is drafted so broadly that the costs are potentially very significant. This is not a responsible use of public resources. What started out as a promising policy tool quickly turned into a giveaway to developers, with very little impact on housing supply for those who are really struggling. The council majority regrettably rejected a series of good government amendments to the legislation to bring maximum public benefit and fiscal controls in exchange for this generous tax break. Particularly egregious is that hidden behind this conversion bill is a tax holiday for any developer who simply knocks a building down and builds something else. Tax breaks to developers shift the tax burden to residents while also straining essential county services such as schools, transportation, and public safety. We thank the county executive for this veto, and we urge the council to work collaboratively with all stakeholders to revise this bill.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alan Bowser. I'm an immediate past president of the Montgomery County Civic Federation. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about this issue. I think we all agree that housing is a priority. We've been working on this issue for decades. Housing Opportunity Commission was established in 1974, and it's been an issue of overriding community concern for decades. I mentioned the Housing Opportunities Commission. Want to also, thank them for their good work, and the Montgomery Housing Partnership. They've been good partners for the county for a long, long time. The Civic Federation believes in making housing a priority. We spent a lot of time over the last few years on that issue. We've supported co-location of affordable housing with public facilities, support from the faith community for affordable housing, increasing the percentage of MPDUs in new projects, and the county executive's priority of the preservation of existing affordable housing. What we've learned over the course of the last decades is that key to a successful strategy in any policy is a policy of community engagement and master planning. We don't have the feeling that many of our elected officials respect community input and participation, and many of our appointed officials from the planning board seem contemptuous of community engagement and communication. Rolling out these bills without a foundation of community support doesn't bode well for success and support. Community engagement, community communication, Doug Duncan knew this, Ike Leggett knew this, County Executive Elrich knows this. We agree with the county executive that the payment in lieu of taxes is ill-advised and not well conceived. We don't need to support subsidies for market rate housing. We can't afford the tax revenue loss in this budget and future budgets. The impact of the county budget is serious. We need to pay attention to the social justice and racial equity issues that come from this policy. We agree that there's been insufficient public hearings. There's only been one. This thing has been 30 days from the time the bill was introduced until the time they want to consider it. That's not enough time. It has been a rush job. We need to focus seriously on affordable housing. So we want to thank the county executive for this move, and we hope that the council will support the veto. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Gannon and Mr. Bowser. I'd now like to bring up Lisa Blackwell-Brown from the Montgomery County Government Employees Organization, or MCGO. MCGO represents 8,000 employees in the county, 6,000 here in the Montgomery County government. They are a valued and trusted labor partner of our county government. Lisa, would you?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm just going to keep doing that. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lisa Blackwell-Brown, Secretary-Treasurer, UFCW Local 1994 MCGO. On behalf of President Wren and all of our brothers, sisters, and siblings, MCGO is proud to stand with the County Executive today in support of his veto of Expedited Bill 2-25. Let me be clear. We fully support the creation of more affordable housing in Montgomery County. Our members, frontline workers, public servants, and everyday families need and deserve access to safe, stable, and truly affordable places to live. Too many of our members are pushed out of the county into other areas due to lack of affordable options. But this bill is not about affordability. It's about giveaways. Expedited Bill 2-25 hands out a 20-year tax exemption to developers, many of whom are already well-resourced, without asking nearly enough in return. That's not a good deal for working people, and it's not a good deal for taxpayers. We should be investing in affordable housing through smart, accountable, and equitable policy. When families are struggling and we are trying to pay our workers a fair and competitive wage, we should not be giving out tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to already wealthy developers. We thank the county executive for standing up for fiscal responsibility, for fairness, and for a vision of housing policy that puts people first, not profits. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like another important community group to come up from the Montgomery County Communities Coalition, Jenny Sue Dunner and Howard Schoenholtz.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. That's great. Thank you. We'll get settled. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jenny Sue Dunner, and I'm the founder of the Montgomery County Communities Coalition. Our members represent communities and HOAs from all around the county. We also have a number of concerned individuals as members of the coalition. There's one thing in our mission statement that I think applies to what is happening today, and I want to quote that to you. I also have some copies of the mission statement if anyone would like to have one. And this is the quote. The Communities Coalition works to ensure that our local and state officials, both elected and appointed, govern and act in a transparent manner with maximum input from all stakeholders. Thus, I applaud County Executive Marc Elrich for his action today. This tax abatement giveaway is part of the More Housing Now proposal, which you may remember suddenly appeared, all 100-plus pages of it, shortly after members of the County Council assured us that nothing was in the works. And not only did it appear, but it had a council hearing date attached to it of March 11th. Now, that's pretty fast moving, as I recall how things usually move. The council then rushed through approval of this pilot program, even though the future of our economy is terribly uncertain at this time. By taking this action today, County Executive Elrich is giving the council an opportunity to reconsider its actions. I hope, and I'm sure the people of Montgomery County hope, that the council takes this opportunity to come up with a better way to get commercial to residential conversion accomplished. And now I'd like to ask my friend, Howard Schoenholtz, who is the Communications Director of the Communities Coalition, to say a few words. Thank you. Howard.
Sorry. Thank you, Jenny Sue. One of the things I wanted to touch on is the question of community involvement in this process. And it's something that I know our county executive has championed and has assured us will continue to champion. You may remember that Council Member Friedson spoke very often about unprecedented outreach when the late and not lamented Attainable Housing Strategy Initiative was under consideration. But as Jenny Sue mentioned, lo and behold, More Housing Now suddenly appeared. Was there any input from the community in putting together More Housing Now? Well, my guess would have been, nah, I don't think so. But I'm kind of a thorough guy, so I personally, on behalf of the Montgomery County Communities Coalition, contacted 20 civic associations and homeowners associations all around the county. And I also spoke with 4 county-wide associations to find out how much input they had in more housing now. The answer was none. None of these organizations was contacted by Councilmember Friedson's office or Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez's office or by those two council members themselves. For the council to approve this without having the community give its input is ridiculous. This isn't a proposal that will just kind of exist in the ether. This is a proposal that's going to affect every single one of us. I mean, as County Executive Elrich has said, these are tough economic times. And for the council to pass a proposal that could cost the county tens of millions of dollars over the next 20 years makes no sense at all. So I just want to say on behalf of myself and also the Montgomery County Communities Coalition, thank you, Marc, for making that decision. We support you.
Thank you, Jenny Sue and Howard. I'd now like to bring up Council Member Rohit Khanna from the town of Somerset. Montgomery County, Maryland has 19 municipalities, including 3 cities, 12 towns, and 4 villages, and Somerset is one of those towns. Thank you so much for joining us, Council Member.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank County Executive Elrich for vetoing this bill, which is, as others have said, fiscally irresponsible. Because the council members who voted for it seem utterly unconcerned that the tax abatement would be offered to any and all conversions, whether they had a financial need or not, which means that taxpayers may end up subsidizing some projects more than necessary, and possibly even those, as the county executive pointed out, that would have proceeded without the abatement. Frankly, this is a giveaway to developers at taxpayers' expense. Why would the county offer a 20-year tax abatement for any conversion that could be financially feasible for less? Why would you leave money on the table? Even if it were true that you could get more revenue than you lose, this approach actually means you lose in the negotiation. So it doesn't make any sense, and it's fiscally irresponsible. There is no debate, I think, that converting high vacancy office buildings to residential use has a public good element. There is no debate that such development faces regulatory and financial barriers. That is why I welcome the zoning changes to facilitate the conversions. I also agree that incentives should be part of public policy, but the deployment of such incentives should be targeted and tailored to ensure the lowest cost to the taxpayer. It is unfortunate that the council rushed this decision, even though its own staff concluded that there were many unanswered questions about the fiscal impact. So taxpayers deserve a lot more transparency on how their tax dollars are being spent. Had the council adopted proposed amendments that could have introduced a competitive process and a fiscal cap, along with other amendments to increase the proportion of required affordable units, it could have mitigated, perhaps not eliminated, but at least mitigated the potential negative fiscal and social impacts. If the county council had asked for a cost-effectiveness assessment of alternatives, it might have concluded that allocating those tax expenditures to its housing production fund, for example, would have generated a lot more mixed income housing per dollar. So I can only hope that the county executive's veto of this bill today provides council members with an opportunity to correct their egregious error. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. For our last two speakers, they're going to be representing certain communities, and so I'd like to bring up here Lloyd Gersey from the Citizens Coordinating Committee on Friendship Heights, and Britt Simitoff from the Kent Mill community. And if you both would like to give final words, and then we'll take some questions from the press.
I represent the Citizens Coordinating Committee on Friendship Heights, 18 communities to the south and southwest of Bethesda. CCCFH has existed for over 50 years. Thank you for vetoing this. The bill sweepingly hands out free tax benefits. It's a handout without any showing of need. What is the premise of this bill? The premise of this bill is that incentives are needed. That is absolutely false. The county executive showed that. But it wasn't, it wasn't just these examples. In about 2 weeks ago, the council considered this bill. There was a question in context of what Mr. Jawanda was asking about the Geico property. I live a mile from the Geico property. Geico has already announced that it is going to close that property, sell it. It is 26 acres with one measly office building on it that they're going to demolish. Don't get a romantic view of this bill that the council has. Demolitions count. So what do they get? Geico, owned by Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett, they all have a little more money than I did working for the federal government. They will get for this oh, by the way, the Friendship Heights sector plan is being revised. It's a certainty it's going to have a lot of possibilities for high-rise, high-density. So the bill is a gift of no property taxes for 20 years on a property that would be developed without incentives, a total gift. Who is going to benefit, and what is the economic efficiency? There's many underutilized buildings in the counties, and this bill chooses winners and losers. But these winners will decide in their own interests, what the outcome is. This is not economically efficient in terms of producing affordable housing. As has been said, we get 1 in 6 of the residential units will be income restricted. The rest will be market rate. The building owner receives an economic advantage over competing residential properties that are going to pay property taxes. And the people who move into these buildings that have had the tax abatement aren't guaranteed any kind of reduction in rent. It's all for the developer. Another aspect of Bill 2-25, it contains only a limited check on the total amount of property tax abatement. Tax abatement is by right. The by right door to tax abatement will be open for a long time. Council members say, oh, we have a safeguard to this in the aggregate very large amount of tax abatements. We have a 10-year sunset. Well, I work for the federal government, which has wasted a lot of money, I might say. But I have never seen a program which has run for 10 years without cost controls. This is shocking. 10 years without controls. And the county is bound to this. Now, they tried to come up with some offsetting thoughts in the council to make this appeal good. Proponents referred to new revenues and income taxes, which the county executive pointed out might not appear, along with property tax at the end of the 20-year abatement. Yet, as Mr. Khanna pointed out, there was no quantitative analysis with or without net present value calculations to show this. And one council member had the nerve to say that revenue received will be more than the abatement we will forego through this bill. Yet after they voted, the council had a press release. The press release did not say this. My view is they thought about it, they couldn't justify it, and they didn't include it. There's a false urgency here. We need not dwell long on the ruinous actions of Trump. But right now, developers are looking at costs. What's the cost of lumber? What's the cost of steel? What are interest rates? They don't know. They're not moving. They're slowing down until they can actually make a good, sound prediction. So while they're slowing down, the council is moving forward at undue speed. It's totally ridiculous. As I thought about this, a feeling came over me. It was as though there was a chorus of developers viewing the magnanimous character of this legislation. And there were two groups. One group was going, buy right. The other was going blank check. So it was buy right, blank check, buy right, blank check. And who's going to pay for this? You, the taxpayer, who has to make up the difference. Thank you for vetoing.
Good afternoon. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Pritzi Montov. I'm a mom of four from the Kent Mill community. I'm also here as the co-founder of the Kent Mill Neighborhood Alerts Initiative, an effort we started when we had no other way to unite our voices. Too often, our neighborhood doesn't have a seat at the table, and this initiative was created to make sure Kent Mill is heard. Our initiative was created out of a deep concern when the County Council began considering development incentives, like pilot, without fully accounting for the harmful impacts on our neighborhood and the Jewish community. Despite our repeated efforts to engage, our voices were unheard. We were overlooked, except for one person, our county executive, Marc Elrich. Today, Marc Elrich listened. By vetoing pilot, he stood up for us, because if pilot were to pass, it would directly threaten our Jewish way of life, disrupting the infrastructure, resources, and stability that our families and community institutions depend on. Let me be clear. We support affordable housing. We believe everyone deserves a safe and stable place to live. This is not the way to achieve it. Some giveaways are good. I have a KM giveaways group where people are able to give and receive items all for free. And it has over 600 members on it in my community. But not this, not as pilot is proposed. It's not a balanced or thoughtful solution. It sacrifices the well-being of existing communities without delivering real accountability or long-term results. In local politics, it's not easy to stand against the wind. But today, Marc Elrich, you did just that. Thank you. On behalf of the hundreds of neighbors I stay in touch with, I want to express our deep gratitude. We just finished celebrating Passover last night, and we're hitting the ground running. And we look forward to working with you and your staff on the issues that matter most, both now and the future. Thank you again so much.
Thank you very much to all the speakers, and we really appreciate your attendance and your voices today. We'll now open it up to some questions for Marc or any of the speakers. Jenny?
So I will say, as far as this package, I did support the technical part of the ZTA because I don't have any problem simplifying a process. If you've got a building and if it's going to be empty, you shouldn't have to go through the entire parking planning process again and over again. And I thought the bill stayed within the bounds of what would be reasonable. This piece of this bill is not the reasonable part. If it passes, there are elections coming up. You know, and I hope that if the citizens get active enough and they decide they're tired of a council that prefers to give away money to developers, that they find a way of expressing that. I'm really concerned about park and planning. One of the speakers talked about the planning process in Montgomery County and Thrive. When the council passed Thrive, it was supposed to be a general plan, and they said nothing would happen in any neighborhood until we opened up the master plans. They haven't opened up any master plans for any of this stuff, not for more housing now, not for, what's the one, the latest one in Silver Spring that we're dealing? Which one? University Corridor Plan and the Attainable Housing Plan. No master plans were opened up for things that bring about major changes in the community. And they say, well, this is all rooted in Thrive. But when they passed Thrive, it said, this doesn't root any of this. This relies on master plans. So it's not good to have a county where your master plans don't count, where if you move into a neighborhood and you think it's one thing and you spend, I mean, I don't know who I know who didn't spend a lot of time trying to figure out where they wanted to live. And then when you find out you live there and then all of a sudden the master plan doesn't mean anything, that's a problem. I think residents need to understand how much we have lost. It didn't used to be that way. I served on a master plan committee. I was appointed by Doug Duncan to serve on a master plan committee, which I think is proof of the fact that you can put disparate voices on a plan committee and actually work at and get solutions. So I'm looking forward to this triggering a kind of citizens revolt. That people are going to start saying, we want to be heard, we want to be part of these plans, we want to be part of these discussions, and we have a right to have that. That's the way Montgomery County used to be. It's not like I'm hearkening to some utopian future. This is what we did. And the fact that we've walked away from it without telling the people we are walking away from it's a problem. I'm not sure I would do that. I mean, first place, you should have about buildings that are 50% occupied. The whole point of the MOVE grant is to get people to bring businesses back to these buildings. So if we're saying we need more economic activity in the county and we need more businesses paying taxes in the county, I'm not exactly sure that this is the best thing to do. I could see that it's an option if a developer really feels that their building's so old and so hopeless that there's no other path. Maybe you would want to knock it down and start over again, but the market's solving that problem just by the being able to convert your stuff to housing right now with no subsidy. So I don't know that we needed to do anything. I think the market will take care of it. The other thing I didn't discuss is the market has handled this two other ways. There are some very notable large developers in Montgomery County who literally, on buildings that weren't penciling out because of loss of tenants, just handed the keys back to the bank. They're an LLC. When you hand the keys back, the LLC dies. And the LLCs, they're not liable for back rent. They're not liable for mortgage payments. They're not liable for anything. So developers have completely walked away from projects, given it to a bank. The bank then has to put it back on the market, and they put it on the market at a rent that the market can support. Because the developers already shown they can't support, they can't get the rents they need to support the mortgages they were previously carrying. So it's going to have to be a lower mortgage to have a rent that someone's going to be able to afford. So the banks handle that already. And the other cases, there are developers who sold their property to a new buyer for 25 cents on the dollar. We're not talking about small things. We're talking about big places. And that meant the new buyer could come and take that building and actually re-tenant it with people who could pay lower rents. So while I'm comfortable enabling it, I'm not sure that, I know it's not a panacea. And I know it doesn't produce housing that we're not otherwise going to get. So it's just another way of getting some housing without any benefit to the community and unworthy of any kind of subsidy. There's just no rationale for why you would subsidize it.
Any other questions?
No kidding. I had to scrape around to find information. I stumbled on, the planning had a report that was done, I think, in 2017 or something. And I found where they were talking about this and what they thought the market would do. And that's where I got the quote from, the market is tipping in this way, so it makes these conversions feasible. So there are little snippets of that out there. But I don't think anybody thinks, first place, nobody's building spec buildings, so no one's going to knock down an office building just to make it residential if they don't think there's demand. You've got guys sitting on permits today that could build tomorrow and then not pulling the permits because they don't believe there's demand. You've got projects that had high-rise zoning, 3 of them now that I can think of that have come in and said there's no market for high-rises. We want to do these lower scale projects. And the first project was initially opposed by planning staff. Despite all the nice things they said about when they were voting for it and what a great idea it was not a great idea when it was behind the doors of the planning staff and the developer, because the developer talked to me. That's why, we helped him come up with a plan for how he's going to put more affordable housing over there. So you got to look for things like that. There's a dearth of it. I don't think people studied, and I think it varies by different markets. There might be markets in this country where they know already that there's no point in building because they have so little demand for housing or for offices. We're in this kind of netherland between the two. But there's enough evidence, but I think the fact that people are already doing this tells you that nobody needs a subsidy.